Hi, it's Heather. And right about now is the time when I usually invite you to join Tuesday group, Thursday group, or our private online community for daughters. And I could tell you how special these spaces are because they really are special. I could tell you how healing it is to be witnessed and understood, and how you deserve exactly that kind of support. But I'm not really talking to you, the podcast listener, because I already know you're interested. I'm talking to your daughter brain. Daughter brain is the voice that says, "Who do you think you are joining something like that? You're not ready. You're too messy. You're too behind. What if you share and no one responds? What if you don't know what to say? What if you're too much? What if you're not enough? What if this is for someone who's braver, further along, or more deserving for you?" I know that voice. I have had that voice myself. But here's the truth, daughter brain doesn't know yet. You belong now, not some future version of you. You don't have to be any different than you are today. There's room for your silence, for your softness, your chaos, your grief, and there are other daughters already inside who will recognize something of themselves in you, and they'll be better for it. So if you're listening and waiting for the quote unquote right time to join us, this is me saying to you, to daughter brain, maybe it's now. Come check out Tuesday group at noon Pacific Standard Time, or Thursday group at 3:30 Pacific Standard Time, or explore our online community at your pace. No pressure, just an open door. You're going to find the links for all of that in the show notes, and you will find us all waiting for you on the other side. Now, on to mayhem.
Today on Mother Mayhem.
Should was how you kept yourself safe. You learned that if you got it just right, you could avoid punishment. You learned to anticipate needs, to edit your feelings, and to make yourself small. Should is the language of survival, but right now it's suffocating you. Welcome back to Mother Mayhem, the podcast for daughters of narcissistic and emotionally limited mothers. I'm your host, Heather Gray, and today I get to introduce all of you to Tully. Now, if you're a fan of Kristen Hanna's Firefly Lane, that name might ring a bell. In the book, Tully is one of the main characters, and she's a daughter. She was abandoned by her mom and largely raised herself. And the Tully you're going to meet today, well, she knows all about what it means to raise yourself. She also knows the emotional whiplash of growing up both revering and fearing her mom, feeling loyal to her even when that loyalty costs her parts of herself. Both of Tully's parents have passed, and when she started therapy, thinking she was there to work on anxiety at work, her therapist asked a question about her childhood. That's when the word narcissistic entered the room for the first time. Not as a label, but as a little bit of a window, a way of beginning to make sense of what had never quite made sense before. And I know a lot of you listening have lived inside of that same moment. You know your relationship with your mom is complicated. You might even be able to name that she was struggling or limited in some way, but you were raised to see her as strong, as someone who did her best, as someone who deserved your respect and protection. So when someone else, especially a therapist, starts using words like abuse, neglect, or trauma, it can be really disorienting, like you're betraying her, or like maybe you're the problem, especially when you have spent your whole lives trying to see the world through her lens, or for a lot of you, being forced to only see the world through her lens. And then there's this. Your nervous system did its job. It protected you from truths that would have been too hard to carry when you were small. So when someone starts peeling back that protective layer, even with really good intentions, it doesn't always feel like that. It feels like the rug has gotten pulled out from under you. And sometimes it's worse. It can feel like the whole floor disappears. And today we're going to walk Tully through that exact experience, grappling with grief and panic and a lifetime of shoulds. She's been asking some big questions about love and loss and what healing actually looks like when your mom isn't even alive, but the wounds that she left behind still are. And Tully, I am so glad you took a chance and you wrote in, because I know so many women are going to relate to your story. I've met daughters just like you in our weekly groups and inside our community. Your story and your truth is going to help them feel seen. I just know it. And I hope that in our conversation today, the Mayhem's going to be able to offer you that same opportunity in return. So here's your story, and I'll find you on the other side. I don't know exactly why I feel the need to reach out, but I do. Maybe it's the validation of my suppressed feelings that feels therapeutic, or maybe the process of writing works better for me since I have a harder time verbally expressing how I feel. I discovered your podcast a few weeks ago as I waited in the car for my daughter during her karate lesson. I had been searching for help with my relationship with my mom, and I finally found it. I have to admit, I burst into tears when I heard your episode on covert narcissism. 5 years ago, I went on medical leave for anxiety. I was 45 and I had just changed careers to become a teacher. I got hired in a very challenging school and I had panic attacks every day. I lost my appetite completely. I couldn't sleep. I fainted a few times and literally felt like I was heading to war every time I got in the car to go to work. I finally had to go on leave and get help. I found a therapist who specialized in anxiety, thinking she could help me with my panic at work. One day, my therapist asked me about my childhood and my parents. I was a little surprised because I was positive it was my job that was giving me anxiety, not my upbringing. So I briefly explained that both my parents had passed away 11 and 13 years ago. I told her they divorced when I was 9 and that I'm an only child. When describing them, I told her my dad was a good man, but growing up, I only saw him every other weekend. My mom basically raised me and had a strong personality. That probably was the red flag for my therapist, because she asked, "What do you mean by strong personality?" Actually, I didn't know what I meant, but I thought that was a pretty clear description. I couldn't elaborate, so I started talking about how hard it was for her to be a single mom raising a daughter without much money. I praised her strength, her work ethic, and her ability to do something extremely hard when the world was basically against her. A few sessions later, after describing some childhood situations, my therapist said the word narcissist, and my body reacted. I got tense. I immediately felt the need to defend my mom and protect her. I started talking again about how hard it was to do what my mom did, being a single mom, raising a child on her own without a lot of money and a long commute, etc., etc. I felt a little confused because my therapist didn't even know her. How could she label her like that? And how could she use that word? Maybe she's making a mistake. I thought maybe I said something wrong to lead her in the wrong direction. As the months and the years went by, the memories came flooding back to me, and my therapist started using words like neglect, abuse, and trauma. And that hit me really hard. On the one hand, it made sense because she was stating the obvious. On the other, those words were completely foreign to me. That's not my life, I thought. How can someone I defended, protected, and praised since I could remember actually be neglectful and abusive towards me? And how was I tricked into defending someone who was traumatizing me? This didn't make any sense. I think I knew deep down my mom's love was conditional, and I was the glue that held us together. It was a huge weight on me growing up, but it was my job. I was good at it too, but sometimes I messed up and I ended up paying for it. I was raised to think it was my mom and me against the rest of the world. She had me thinking that there was this weird outside force that was against her. She told me stories of people saying she would never make a good mother. She would never be successful. She would never live a fulfilling life. Her goal in life was always to prove them wrong. And I made it my life mission to build her up, to give her praise, to make sure she was okay, to make our life okay. If I didn't do that, our world would crumble. If I didn't do all the things, it would be like a knife cutting her open. It would mean I was taking the enemy's side. She would be so hurt that she would close herself off in her room and give me the silent treatment. The guilt and the silence were unbearable. No one else was in her house, no brothers, sisters, or dad, just the silence. That powerful vacuum sucked the life out of me. I used to promise myself not to apologize because I knew I had done nothing wrong. I would tell myself, don't do it, Tully, don't do it. Do not apologize. Be strong. You didn't do anything wrong. But I never once kept that promise to myself. Not once. I always gave in and apologized for what I had said or didn't say or how I said it. I then would tell her what I had meant to say, which was the version she wanted to hear. The edited version propped her up in some way or put someone else down, including me. After I convinced her of the revised version, she would come out of her room. My mom divorced my dad when I was 9 and we moved to Bainbridge Island, which is a 30-minute ferry ride from Seattle. She commuted every day to the city while I went to school on the island. She said she moved us there because the schools were good. I don't know how she thought that was a good decision for us. It was so isolating. She would leave home at 6 a.m. and come home 12 hours later. I would get myself to school, terrified to walk in the dark to the bus stop early in the morning. Then I would get myself to after-school activities and back home, eat my snack, watch TV, do homework. She would get home in the evening, drink her glass of wine, and tell me to wait to talk to her until she was able to unwind from her long day. By the time she was ready to talk to me, I had lost all enthusiasm, but I knew she was doing her best, and I praised her strength. I remember having panic attacks that night when we first moved to the island. I realized as an adult that I didn't feel safe being so isolated and alone all the time, but at the time I had no idea. I remember she would get mad at me when I was panicking because I was keeping her awake and she had to get her sleep for work the next day. I would then quiet down and eventually fall asleep. I remember her saying multiple times, "You only calm down when I get angry at you," as if that's what you need to feel better. I never quite knew what that meant or if it was true. I remember right after the divorce, I wanted to see my dad more. I only got to see him every other weekend, and I was used to seeing him every day. I told my mom, and she said, "Okay, ask him." Her tone was off, but I decided to ask him. Unfortunately, he said he thought the setup was fine the way it was. I don't know why he said that, but it didn't feel good. I got off the phone and I told my mom that he wanted things to stay the way they were. And she said, "I'm just glad I didn't have to be the one to tell you. I don't always want to be the bad guy." I was only 9 and I remember feeling empty and confused. I felt like I had been proactive. Little 9-year-old me had the courage to tell my parents what I wanted, but I came up empty-handed. I went to my room silently and sat there in confusion. There was no acknowledgement of my wants, my needs, or my emotions, or even an explanation for that matter. My mom did tell me he has a girlfriend now. He probably wants to see her on the weekends. I don't know if that's true. Now, as a mom, I feel really sad for that little girl. I would have handled so many situations differently, and I think that's where I can see things clearly. when I put myself in the mother role and think how things should have happened. When I put myself in that little girl's place, I feel confused, sad, and suppressed. I know I was taught to monitor my mother constantly, and it was exhausting. I could detect the slightest change in her tone of voice, her body language, even her breathing, because her sighs meant something was off. I not only monitored her, but I monitored what I said and what I did at all times. I did everything in my power to prevent getting the silent treatment. I think growing up as an only child with a covert narcissist on an island, for crying out loud, yep, was like a triple whammy. It felt like I was living in a vacuum with a constant emotional pull which kept me off center and confused. I realize now that I never developed my own emotions, feelings, or personality. To this day, I don't entirely know who I am or what I really stand for. I think my husband and my kids know me more than I know myself. I have a huge disconnect there. I know other women's narcissistic mothers are still alive, which creates really hard situations. I don't have any of that, which has its advantages and disadvantages. I can't tell her how I feel. I can't stand up for myself. I can't do anything. She's gone. Again, silence. But as awful as it sounds, I know it's easier that she's gone. If she were alive today, it would be unbearable. Sometimes I imagine what a certain situation would be like with her and my now teenagers, and I know I would be trying to make everything okay so she wouldn't be offended. I'm used to editing and revising my own words, but not my kids. There's only so much I could handle. Now that she's gone, I wonder how I should think of her. I know now she's not the super strong mom that stood up to the world like she wanted me to believe. Rather, she's a covert narcissistic woman that probably was incapable of love. So, should I be angry? Should I hate her? I don't think I can do that. What will help me heal? And then I think this is all silly anyway. She's not even alive. I also ask myself, who was my mom? Did narcissism define her? Was she a loving woman that was taken over by narcissism at some point? Is it like a disease that takes over a healthy person? Were there glimpses of that healthy person between the narcissism? Or is this all just wishful thinking? Did I even love her? Can a daughter love a narcissistic mom? What was our relationship realistically, if not a loving one? I was with my mom when she died. She had lung cancer and stayed with me the last 2 weeks of her life. I asked her during those last days, what am I going to do without you? You're my rock. I was really hoping for some words of wisdom, something beautiful and power to remember her by, and to help me move forward. And she said, you'll be fine. I thought, that's it? I'll be fine? That's what you want to tell me right before you die? Nothing to pass on to my kids, nothing to help me? I decided to read more into those words. I decided what she meant to say was, you are strong and amazing. You are more than prepared to be on your own. Listen to your heart, Tully. You got this. Because that's what I would have said to my daughter. Instead, she said, I have no regrets. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, but I have no regrets. I lived my life exactly how I wanted. And I remember thinking, well, that's great for her. I'm glad she lived a full life. But I was confused when she told me, I left you alone a lot and I used guilt on you. I didn't know what to say to that. I was 37 at the time and I wasn't ready to hear that from her. I hadn't reflected on my childhood at that point, so I didn't know why she said that on her deathbed. Was that an apology, a confession, or recognition that she did harm? What was it? Or did she want me to tell her again, you did your best and you were amazing, even though the world was against you? I didn't say anything. I remember her telling me multiple times as a kid, they never thought I would be a good mom, but look how good you turned out. I must have done something right. You could have been really rebellious and gone crazy, but you didn't. As I reflect on this as an adult, it's all really messed up. It was always about her, never about me. But guess what? My childhood wasn't about her at all. I raised myself. I kept myself in line. Yes, you did. She was gone 12 hours a day, and when she was present, she punished me for not building her up. I did it all. I raised myself, and I took care of her emotional needs as well. That's a lot for a little girl, and I'm learning now that it comes with a huge price. I'm very critical of myself and very rigid. I'm constantly asking myself, should I do this? Should I do that? Is this right? Is this wrong? I should have done this or that. It eats away at me, and it is exhausting. Never mind the fact that I struggle with setting boundaries and come across as a pushover to other people. What's eating away at me still is the anxiety, especially at work. I continue to teach with the anxiety, but I manage to push through. I know it's totally irrational, but I have panic attacks about teaching certain students. There's a certain personality or behavior that sends my body into extreme fight or flight mode, and it is unbearable. The students who are unpredictable, defiant, explosive, and violent activate something in me that makes me want to run for safety. Every school year, I have a few students that fit this description because, again, I'm working in a challenging school with a lot of trauma. I end up obsessing over these few students. I pray that they're absent so I won't have to deal with them. I obsess over how much time I have to spend with them each day. I feel the impending doom on Sundays knowing the week is about to start. I don't know what triggers the students' behaviors, but sometimes I can see it build and then they explode. I try my hardest to prevent their behaviors, but it's so unpredictable that I end up being hypervigilant. I know my reaction isn't normal, and it's embarrassing that a 9-year-old can have that kind of power over me. I'm guessing that this has to do with my mother, but I'm not sure. I don't feel these students act exactly like my mom because she wouldn't explode loudly and throw things, but there must be a link. If you could help me understand my extreme reaction, I would be very grateful because the anxiety and the obsession I have taken over every aspect of my life. Anyway, I could go on and on. More and more realizations hit me every day. I feel like the volcano is erupted, or at least the lava is flowing. Sometimes I feel like a weight has been lifted, and sometimes I feel like I'm carrying a boulder on my shoulders. I do want to thank you for your podcast. Hopefully, I will see the light at the end of the tunnel with your help. And sorry, I did not mean to write over 2,500 words. Oops, I guess I have a lot to say after all. Thank you. Haha, Telly, good job taking up space. Good job telling your whole story and allowing all of it to be true. And can we just sit with that story for a second together? All 2,500 of these words held a hell of a lot. There is so much hurt and so much pain and so much confusion. And I hear how complicated the pain is and the grief is for you. And there is a lot to unpack. And I think the best thing I can do for you here is to actually help you unpack some of this, to put it into piles so you can better see and understand yourself. But Tully, doing this comes with a bit of a warning label. You spilled all of this out to me, and I imagine you probably felt scared to death and a little bit relieved all at once. But one of the hard things about doing this on the show is then you see your story, you see your pain and your struggles and your greatest vulnerabilities reflected back to you. And I know how brutal that can be. Your therapist held up a mirror, and you have been in this dizzying circle trying to make sense of everything. I'm hoping here that we can get you still, but also it might be a challenge for you and for the other daughters listening to stay grounded in the conversation. So I'm going to remind you and everyone who shares in this experience with you that you can go easy. You can listen in 10-minute increments across days or weeks. You can take notes. You can come back. The major podcast apps have transcript options available. So if you need to take notes or highlight or copy anything we say here today, you're going to be able to. And I know at the outset that I am not going to be able to cover everything. And that isn't because you're too much, but it is because I have to be as clinically sound in my response as possible and as I know how to be. And your brain can really and truly only handle so much in a single sitting. So, yes, I do want you to make sense of yourself, but also I don't want you to become undone by it. I'm going to use care here. I'm going to go slowly and carefully so that you, Tully, and all the daughters listening can hold this, but also I can hold that I know it's going to hurt. And I'm going to try really hard to go gentle. Tully, you are managing a lot of complicated things all at once. Here you are grieving a mother who's died, but also you're waking up to the truth of who your mom was that you had never been able to see. And quite frankly, your mom could never really truly see you. And there are so many threads that we need to untangle here for all of this to start making a little bit more sense to you. And we need to honor and respect each one of those threads. You're untangling trauma, you're untangling truth, you're untangling yourself from grief and guilt and panic and shame. Whew, Tully, that is a tall order. And of course, you feel a little bit like you're coming undone. I think it would be helpful if I could help you make sense of your panic first. I feel like if we're able to do that a little bit, you will have an easier time understanding yourself, having a little bit more compassion for yourself, and showing yourself grace with some of the other hard things you were talking about. I know your panic doesn't make sense to you, but Tully, it makes a lot of sense to me. And I know a lot of daughters listening in can relate to what you have shared because they too live with really intense panic in their lives. It's important for you all to remember that anxiety and panic are not always literal. And I think you risk a little bit minimizing your experience when you talk about panic being induced by 9-year-olds. This is not that. That is not what is happening. What you're dealing with in these really intense moments is this: a trauma response. I promise you, you are not obsessed over these kids. What's happening here is hypervigilance. It's just been 10x'd because it's gone unrecognized for so long. You're scanning for signs that they might explode. That is what your nervous system learned to do a long, long time ago. Scan for danger, react fast, shut it down. And your panic isn't irrational. It is actually pretty smart. The problem is at times it's misfiring because the danger that it was first trained to track isn't the danger you're facing now. Explosive, unpredictable kids, your body may not be matching their behavior to your mom's behavior on the surface, but it recognizes their energy. That is likely what feels familiar and dysregulating for you. Their energy is being read by your body as volatile. You are feeling pressure and tension that one wrong move could end in catastrophe, that you won't know how to handle it, that it'll all start getting worse, that there will be some kind of consequence if you don't know the exact perfect thing to do or say to prevent any of that from happening or to successfully manage when it does. Your panic has one job: preparing you for survival. And yes, I know it sounds dramatic, but not really in the context of your reaction. You're not overreacting. You're remembering. And this is really what I want you to know and understand. The response you're having isn't coming out of nowhere. It's certainly not coming out from any kind of weakness. And it's not the lack of coping skills or evidence or anything like that, that there's anything wrong with you. It came from learning over years how to stay emotionally safe in an unsafe and unpredictable environment. When a child grows up managing a caregiver's moods, it wires the nervous system in a very specific way. You learn to anticipate dysregulation before it happened, to adjust your behavior to keep someone else steady, and to carry the emotional weight of the room without help. That is a survival adaptation, and it makes sense that your nervous system now reacts to unpredictability as a threat, because for you, it once was. So when a child in your class is explosive or unpredictable, even though they're only 9 years old and you're an adult, it registers as danger in your body. Not because you don't know better, but because your body doesn't feel safe, even if your brain says it should. This is where trauma brain and wise mind often find themselves separating. You might know you're not in danger, but trauma brain doesn't wait for logic. It prepares you to run, to hide, to manage, to fix. That's what your body's trained to do. And it's not because there's something wrong with you or because you can't figure it out like other teachers in the school are, but because your body is really freaking smart, because your body chooses survival. And now that you're in a new chapter of your life and doing all of this really big work to heal, your body doesn't know yet that it's okay and it's allowed to relax. It's still bracing. It's still waiting for the shoe to drop. It's still convinced that calm is right before a storm, right before something goes wrong. And that's not a you problem. That's not a Tully problem. That is a trauma adaptation still online, even if you don't quite need it there. I want to offer you a little bit of direction here. We do not want to shame the part of you that is scanning. We want to help you partner with her. We want to name the moments when trauma brain is taking the wheel, and we want to invite wise mind back in. That might look like noticing the tightening in your chest right before going to school and saying, "Hey, body, I know you're trying to protect me. I see you, but we're not in that house anymore. That woman is not coming home. This is a child. I have tools now. I can ask for help." Tully, one of the most powerful and profound threads in your story is the confusion around how much of your experience counts as trauma. You wrote, "How can someone I defended and praised actually be abusive?" And I want you and I to tackle this one directly. I'm really glad you said something about feeling this way, because this is something we hear all the time inside of our group and inside of the community. How you are feeling right now and the questions you're asking are so normal for daughters. And I know you feel so isolated and different and alone right now, but I promise you that you're not. You make so much sense to me, and I know your fellow daughters listening in feel the same. Here's the thing. Grieving a narcissistic mother after she has died is complicated. It isn't just about missing a person. It's about losing the story you told yourself to survive. You didn't just lose your mother. You lost the version of her you needed to believe in. And that kind of grief, it is messy and disorganized. It doesn't follow clean stages. There's rage, there's relief, there's guilt for the relief, there's clarity followed by doubt. There's the question, did I even love her? And then the follow-up, was she even lovable? There is nothing wrong with you for asking those questions. You're waking up, and waking up can really hurt sometimes. So, no, not everything is trauma. But if you are finding the dots that you're connecting now, if memories are surfacing and your body's reacting before your brain catches up, that's not you inventing trauma. That's your nervous system telling you the truth. It wasn't allowed to say the truth before. And so now it is really okay for you to listen. And I want to tread this one carefully, Tully, but I also need to say something and observe something for you. Your letter is full of shoulds. I should be over this. I should be fine. I should know what to do. But I want to tell you what I believe. Should is the voice of your mother, not your wise mind. Should was how you kept yourself safe. You learned that if you got it just right, you could avoid punishment. You learned to anticipate needs, to edit your feelings, and to make yourself small. Should is the language of survival, but right now it's suffocating you. So instead, Tully, let's you and I try this. How do you feel? What do you feel? What do you need? And what do you want to believe about yourself? Every time you pause and you ask yourself those questions instead of defaulting to should, you're not just regulating yourself. That is how you build self-trust. And of course you default to should. It's the language your nervous system was raised on. It gave you a sense of control in that house that felt so wildly unpredictable and so lonely and so isolated. If you could just follow the rules, even the ones that weren't written down, they were just unspoken, you could avoid the silence, the sighs, the shutdowns. Should wasn't just a thought for you. It was a shield. It was your armor. It was your protection. But now the problem is it isn't keeping you safe. It's keeping you stuck because should doesn't allow for curiosity. It doesn't ask what's true, what's possible, what's fair. It only knows about performance, and performance is never going to be the path that leads you to peace. So when you swap out should for, let's go with this one, what's true for me right now? You let your own voice start to be heard, not the one you had to rehearse, the one that got buried. That one, well, she is still here and she is still there. And if that voice shakes a little bit when she talks, that's okay. It just means it's your body trying something new. So when the shoulds come up, and they're going to, try responding like this. I hear you. I know you're trying to protect me, but I don't need to earn my safety anymore. I get to ask myself what's real, not what's required. That is the new path, Tully. And don't look now, my friend, but you are already on it. And Tully, you said something that I've been thinking about ever since I read it. You said, now that she's gone, I wonder how I should think of her. And Tully, you know there's nothing easy about this question. Grief often does assume that the person was good or that we should feel sad in a specific, particular kind of way. But when a narcissistic mother dies, well, daughters grieve in layers. You grieve what happened. You grieve what never did. You grieve who she could have been. You grieve the girl you had to be. And you also asked a pretty important question. Was she overtaken by narcissism? Were there glimpses of something or someone healthy inside of her? And the answer is maybe. Maybe there were glimpses. Maybe you saw them. Maybe they're what kept you holding on. But even if they were just glimpses, and glimpses don't erase harm. And oh my gosh, Tully, your mom's words at the end, they pack one hell of a punch. I have no regrets. I lived my life the way I wanted. Of course, those words weren't comforting because they weren't at all about connecting. She wasn't offering love. She was offering a defense. And the reason that that hurts is because you deserved a mother who saw you, who spoke to you with care, who gave you something to carry forward, not just this thing to question forever. What an awful, cruel, unkind way she left you. God, I'm so sorry she handed you that. It is awful. And you, Tully, did not deserve it. And I need you to hear something clearly here. I know right now you feel like you're just crumbling. And I hate that healing does that to daughters. And I know it's kind of dramatic, but this isn't that. What's happening for you right now is that you are in the middle of remembering, of naming your truth, and that is really, really hard work. You've all heard me say it before on the show. If it were easy, everyone would be doing it. The panic, the grief, the confusion, they're proof that your body's catching up to a truth that it couldn't speak for decades. And now you get to choose what comes next. You get to move slowly. You get to grieve in your own way. You get to leave places that hurt you. You get to be more than the glue that held someone else's world together. You get to be you. You get to heal. You get to be more yourself. And you get to meet yourself. And Tully, you didn't ask me about this, but before you go, I just have to say, you also get to choose a new job. I am not saying that you have to, and I am not naming your job as toxic or anything like that. You didn't tell me enough about it to know, but you did tell me that your body reacts to being there. And I would be remiss to offer this whole conversation on listening to your body and honoring what it says if I didn't also point out that maybe it's okay to leave your job, to find a place where your nervous system has an easier time existing. And sure, you might reflect on our conversation today and realize a little bit for yourself that your body is reacting out of trauma and that this isn't that. But if you do that work and you have that conversation, then also do me a favor here and remember that your body not being comfortable is reason enough to leave. And I might be super presumptuous here in saying that, and I almost didn't say it, but I think I would regret not pointing that out because you do have that option. And quite frankly, if you've been listening to the show for a while, you have heard about my stories working in residential. And you say that you have a challenging population with a lot of trauma. And well, I know what it's like to work in a challenging population with a lot of trauma. And a traumatized 9-year-old is nothing to mess with. You can tell yourself that these kids are 9 years old, but when they come at you, and they tend to come at you, it doesn't feel like that. So, yes, Tully, I believe you. I believe that it hurts. I believe that you're suffering. And I believe that you deserve to suffer less. You, Tully, are a member of this community of women around the world who are in this together. And I, for sure, most definitely, am in it with you too. Bye for now. I do hope you enjoyed today's conversation. If you have a question you'd like me to consider for the show, please do email me over at heather@daughtersnpd.com. You are always welcome to share your story or questions by recording yourself using the voice app on your phone. For best recording quality, please do record directly into your phone without using headphones or Bluetooth speakers. We're building an incredible community as well over on Instagram, and I'd love to see you over there too. You can find us at Daughters NPD. Lastly, if you love what you've been hearing here on Mayhem and have found the show helpful in your own trauma recovery, please do consider becoming a Mother Mayhem sponsor by purchasing simple scripts for saying hard things. It's a resource I created that provides the right words for the hard conversations, and it covers life, love, and work. You'll find a link for that in the show notes. If you know another woman who needs this conversation in her life, please do share the show with her. Your reviews and social shares help spread the word, and I hope you'll consider doing so. Special thanks to Heather Clark for editing the show. She's in my head and knows what I meant to say when the words come out backwards. Thanks so much for your time today. As always, I'm in it with you. Bye for now.